A collective gasp rippled through the room. In the defendant's chair, 17-year-old Tyler Jensen adjusted his collar and laughed not loudly, not enough to echo, but just enough for the woman beside him, his own mother, to stiffen. Her eyes darted toward him in disbelief. Across the aisle, the prosecution team froze. The judge paused, gavel in hand, gaze narrowing. The baby's voice had belonged to Noah Jensen. Just 14 months old, dead now, and the boy on trial. His older brother, Judge Haynes, cleared his throat. "Proceed with restraint," he said, eyeing the jury. "This evidence is graphic." The prosecutor, a measured man named D.A. Cole Warner, nodded once. "Understood, Your Honor." He turned back to the gallery, hands clasped behind his back. "The clip you just witnessed," Warner said, voice steady, "is the last time Noah was heard alive." He took a step forward. "And the laugh you just heard from the defendant is not grief. It is not denial. It is the sound of arrogance, of a teenager who believes he's smarter than this courtroom." Tyler didn't flinch. His arms were crossed. His foot tapped, slow and steady. From the gallery, someone whispered, "Monster." Judge Haynes pounded the gavel. "Order." Detective Marla Reyes leaned toward the lead prosecutor. "He's enjoying this," she whispered. Warner's jaw tightened. He thinks he's still in control. Behind them, Noah's mother, Erin Jensen, held onto a tiny blue pacifier, the one her son wouldn't sleep without. It looked comically small in her trembling hand, like a relic from a different world. Next to her, Rachel Jensen, the oldest sibling, sat rigid, her face blank but her eyes locked on Tyler. No tears, just fury. Tyler hadn't looked at them once. The judge turned to the defense attorney. "Mr. Hartley, do you have any objection to this line of evidence?" "None at this time," Hartley replied. Then, turning toward Tyler, he added under his breath, "Stop smiling." Tyler leaned closer, whispered, "I'm not smiling. I'm remembering." Hartley recoiled slightly. He'd defended gang leaders, fraudsters, and abusers, but something about this kid unsettled him. The prosecution resumed. "We'll play the next segment momentarily, but before that, let's examine what the forensic report showed," Warner said. "Noah Jensen didn't fall. He didn't choke. He didn't wander off. He let the silence stretch. He was smothered, silently, by hands that should have protected him. Murmurs. A woman in the gallery covered her mouth. One juror looked down. Another stared at Tyler, blinking fast. Tyler turned to his mother then. "They're lying," he whispered. "You know I'd never hurt him." Erin didn't answer. She couldn't. Her eyes were on the screen again. Frozen on the moment the lullaby stopped, and silence fell. She had heard that same silence once before, when she walked into the nursery that morning and found Noah's tiny chest. Still, Detective Reyes scribbled a note and passed it to Warner. He read it, blinked once, and looked back at Tyler. "He's calm now," it said, "but that laugh, it was real. It's not grief. It's memory." Warner's lips thinned. He walked toward the jury box. "We'll show you more soon," he said. "But I want you to hold on to that first moment. That sound, that silence, that smirk." Tyler leaned back, yawned. In the corner, a young court reporter paused mid-keystroke. She glanced at Tyler, then at the pacifier still clutched in his mother's hand. Something didn't add up, and she wasn't the only one who felt it. Judge Haynes leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Warner, is it true there's more footage?" Warner replied slowly, "Yes, Your Honor, and in the next video, we see what Tyler didn't know was being recorded." The courtroom tensed, because the truth wasn't buried, it was waiting. The night before everything shattered was quiet, soft, and achingly ordinary. The kind of night families never realize they'll one day replay endlessly in their minds, searching for signs that were never visible. Erin Jensen hummed under her breath as she folded a stack of baby clothes fresh from the dryer. The faint scent of lavender fabric softener hung in the air. Across the living room, her husband Mark flipped through a football game on mute, the room lit only by the warm glow of a corner lamp. Upstairs, 14-month-old Noah babbled in his crib, his voice echoing through the baby monitor like birdsong. Tyler sat at the kitchen table, scrolling his phone, earbuds in, hoodie up. He was supposed to be watching his little brother for the evening. Erin glanced at him briefly. "You check on Noah?" she asked. Tyler didn't look up. "Yeah," he mumbled. "He's fine. Leave your door cracked, please," she added gently. "He gets scared if he wakes up alone." He didn't respond. Mark looked over and said nothing. A familiar silence settled between father and son, one that had grown heavier lately. Tyler had become more distant, more irritated, more sharp-edged. But no one had dared say it out loud. Upstairs, Noah's monitor let out a coo. Erin smiled and turned back to the laundry. In the nursery, Noah stood at the rails of his crib, wobbling slightly, clutching a small blue pacifier with one hand and banging the crib rail with the other. He wasn't fussy, just playful. The kind of joyful defiance only a baby can carry without malice. He didn't know that behind the cracked door, someone was watching. Later, during the trial, this moment would be frozen in memory, not for what happened then, but for the aching innocence of what didn't. Erin had taken a photo that night. Noah in his pajamas, tiny rockets and stars dancing across the fabric, his hair tousled from bath time, his big brown eyes wide and curious. He'd learned to say mama just that week. Tyler had even been there when he first said it. They used to be close. At least that's what everyone believed. Tyler had helped change diapers. He'd made Noah laugh with silly dances. There was even a video of him singing to Noah at bedtime, his voice awkward but soft, but that was months ago. Lately, Tyler had grown colder. Quick to anger, he'd started locking his door. Once, Rachel said she'd heard him mutter, "Why is he always crying?" when he thought no one was around. Still, none of them saw it coming. That night, Erin kissed Noah goodnight and placed the pacifier gently on his chest. "Love you, my little moonbeam," she whispered. She turned off the light, leaving only the soft glow of a night lamp shaped like a bear. Its faint yellow light cast gentle shadows across the crib. Downstairs, Mark poured a glass of wine. Erin sat beside him, rested her head on his shoulder. "They're both asleep," she said softly, and for a moment the world felt safe, warm, whole. But upstairs, Tyler hadn't gone to bed. He stood outside Noah's room, eyes fixed on the cracked door. He hadn't blinked in a while. Inside the crib, Noah turned in his sleep, the pacifier slipping from his chest to the floor with a soft tap. A sound so small, so innocent it should have meant nothing, but later, it would be the sound that echoed in Erin's mind the loudest, the last safe moment, the final thread before it all unraveled. Just before heading to bed, Rachel passed by Tyler's room. His door was open. She paused when she saw him standing there, in the dark, staring at the baby monitor like it was whispering secrets only he could hear. She opened her mouth to speak. But he turned suddenly, and she caught something in his eyes she'd never seen before. She didn't say a word, just kept walking. Down the hall, Noah whimpered once. Tyler moved, and the nursery door slowly creaked open. The next morning began with confusion, not chaos. The kind of confusion that masks itself as denial. The kind where the human mind refuses to believe what the eyes are seeing. Erin Jensen's scream woke the neighborhood. When paramedics arrived, she was cradling Noah on the nursery floor, her voice gone raw from shouting his name. The baby's body was still warm, his pacifier lying a few feet away, half under the crib. Tyler stood in the doorway, frozen. His hair messy, his expression unreadable. I found him like this," he stammered. He wasn't breathing. Mark Jensen pushed past the paramedics. "You called 911?" Tyler nodded, holding up his phone. His hands were trembling, but not like someone terrified. More like someone performing what fear should look like. At first, everyone believed him. He was only 17, after all. A quiet, awkward kid who played video games and kept to himself. The family tragedy drew the sympathy of the town. But within hours, whispers began to stir inside the walls of the small Jensen home. Detective Marla Reyes was the first to notice something off. She crouched near the crib, gloved hands tracing the rail. "These marks," she said quietly to her partner. "They're too low for a fall, too deep for a baby." She picked up the pacifier sealed in a plastic bag. A faint smudge of skin oil glistened on it, too large to be Noah's. Downstairs, Tyler sat at the kitchen table while an EMT examined Erin. He watched them carefully, eyes darting between the officers. "Son," one of them said gently, "can you tell us what happened?" Tyler rubbed his face. "I put him to bed around 10. He was crying, so I gave him his pacifier and left the light on. When I came back an hour later, he was on the floor. Did you hear anything? A fall, maybe?" He shook his head. "I sleep heavy. The detective scribbled something down, then glanced at the baby monitor on the counter. It was unplugged. "Why's this off?" she asked. Tyler blinked. Ted must have died, but the battery light was green. At the funeral 2 days later, rain fell like it had a purpose. Small-town faces filled the church pews, soft murmurs mixing with the low hum of the organ. Erin sobbed into Rachel's shoulder, while Mark sat stone still, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles whitened. Tyler walked in last, dressed neatly in black, carrying a single white rose. He walked to the front, placed the rose on the casket and whispered something no one could hear. Then, when the choir began "Amazing Grace," his lips twitched, just slightly upward. Rachel saw it. Her chest tightened. After the service, neighbors murmured behind umbrellas. "Poor boy," one said. "He's in shock." But another whispered, "I saw him laughing yesterday at the diner." By evening, the police received the autopsy results. Cause of death: asphyxiation by manual pressure. Not a fall. Not an accident. Detective Reyes called the Jensens in for a statement. When she mentioned the autopsy, Erin gasped. "You're saying someone did this?" Reyes nodded. "I'm afraid so." Mark turned to Tyler. "You were the only one home." Tyler's eyes widened, lips parting. "You think I did this?" "No one said that," the detective replied, but her tone was clinical, almost detached. "We just need the full truth." He leaned back in the chair. "You won't find anything," he muttered. Reyes watched him for a moment, then slid a photo across the table. The image of Noah's bruises. "These don't happen from falling out of a crib." Tyler's gaze flickered to the photo, then away. "Maybe he got caught in the bars," he said softly. "You sure about that?" "I said maybe." His voice sharpened. Reyes wrote something down. She'd seen this before, the irritation, the defensiveness. Not guilt exactly, but something colder. Control slipping. Later that night, she reviewed the case files at her desk. Every instinct screamed that something didn't add up. The timeline, the position of the body, the unplugged monitor. Her partner, Detective Cole, leaned over. "You think the brother's involved?" Reyes didn't look up. "I think he's hiding something. I just don't know what yet." She pulled up the digital backup from Tyler's phone, still under forensic review. One corrupted file appeared, time-stamped at 10:58 p.m., minutes before Noah's estimated time of death. The screen glitched, then cleared. A voice came through the static. "Tyler's. Why won't you shut up?" Then a loud thud. Reyes froze. The file ended. She exhaled slowly, her hand trembling just slightly over the pause button. Reyes grabbed her coat and walked straight into the hallway. "Get Warner on the phone," she said. "Why?" her partner asked. "Because if this is what I think it is," she replied, "we're not dealing with an accident anymore." Down the hall, the evidence light blinked red. Recording. The truth was finally beginning to surface, and this time, the silence spoke louder than words. By the time Monday arrived, the town of Ashbrook wasn't whispering anymore. It was buzzing. The leaked clip hit Facebook first, then TikTok, then local news. The soundbite was short, grainy, low quality, but impossible to ignore. Tyler Jensen's voice. "Why won't you shut up?" Then silence. Then a thud. The caption read, "Is this the voice of a killer? Teen brother under suspicion for baby sibling's death." Within hours it had over 80,000 views. Strangers flooded comment sections. Some defended him. Could be taken out of context. Others were brutal. "He needs to fry." Inside the Jensen home, silence hung like a storm cloud. Mark hadn't spoken all morning. He stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window, his coffee cold. Erin sat at the table, eyes red, the pacifier clutched in her fist like a prayer. Rachel paced the hallway, her phone buzzing non-stop. Her friend had texted, "Is it true? Did your brother actually do it?" She didn't reply. She couldn't. Upstairs, Tyler scrolled through his own video going viral. He smiled. At the Ashbrook courthouse, reporters gathered outside, microphones in hand, cameras rolling. "Tyler Jensen," one reporter said into the lens, "beloved big brother turned possible killer." The footage leaked this morning has shaken the small town to its core. Inside, DA Warner and Detective Reyes watched the leak unfold in real time. "Someone in digital forensics messed up," Reyes muttered, arms crossed. "No," Warner said quietly. "Someone in forensics wanted it out." He pointed to the clip again. "This wasn't an accident. This was a message. Reyes raised an eyebrow. From who? Warner didn't answer. But his eyes stayed locked on the screen, because behind the viral clip was something far more dangerous. Public opinion. That afternoon, at the local grocery store, a stranger approached Erin in the parking lot. "You should be ashamed," the woman hissed. "Raising a murderer under the same roof as a baby." Erin stepped back, stunned. "You don't know anything about my son." "Oh, I know enough," the woman snapped. "I heard that recording. We all did." Rachel rushed over, shielding her mom. "Keep walking," she warned. "Now." The woman scoffed and left. Erin turned to Rachel, tears welling. "How could he? How could Tyler?" Rachel didn't answer, because even she didn't know anymore. That night, Detective Reyes sat with Warner going through more digital records. "This just came in," she said, sliding a printout across the table. A text from Tyler to his friend Josh, dated 4 days before Noah died. Warner read aloud, "That baby cries on purpose. Like he knows how to mess with me." He lowered the page. "That's not just anger. That's intent." Reyes nodded. "And there's more. Josh has agreed to testify. Said Tyler joked about putting a pillow over the crib." Warner sighed. "Good, we're getting closer." He turned to Reyes. "But get ready for hell. His defense will say it's all circumstantial. That he was just a sarcastic teen." Reyes shook her head. "Sarcasm doesn't kill babies." Meanwhile, inside his cell, Tyler leaned against the wall, eyes closed, smirk lingering. His attorney, Hartley, paced in front of him. "That video leak, this changes everything. We need to be careful with what you say going forward." Tyler opened one eye. "Let them talk." "They don't have proof," Hartley stopped. "They have your voice." "So?" "They have your text messages." Tyler shrugged. "They have your friend willing to testify." For the first time, Tyler's jaw flexed. "Josh is a coward," Hartley stared. "He's your best friend," Tyler muttered. "He'll crack on the stand." Hartley didn't respond, just gathered his notes and left the room, the metal door slamming behind him. Rachel opened it to find Detective Reyes, expression grim. She held up a small manila envelope. "This was just recovered from Tyler's deleted files," she said. Inside was a full-length video, uncut, unfiltered, and what it showed would change everything. The courtroom was full, reporters, townsfolk, Noah's daycare teacher, even Tyler's former baseball coach. The gavel hadn't even dropped, and already tension hung so thick it felt like the walls were leaning in. On the prosecution bench, D.A. Warner reviewed his notes without blinking. Across from him, defense attorney Hartley adjusted his tie, his fingers betraying a slight tremble. In the defendant's seat, Tyler lounged like he was watching a high school assembly. He smirked at a juror, winked, then leaned over and whispered to Hartley, "Bet I get out by Christmas." Judge Haynes entered, black robe flowing behind him like storm clouds. He scanned the room, eyes landing briefly on Tyler. He didn't smile. "This court is now in session." Opening statements began with Warner's voice echoing like a knife through fog. "This case," he said, pacing slowly before the jury, "is not about an accident. It's about choices. It's about a 17-year-old who chose silence over mercy, rage over love." He paused. "And death over decency." Hartley rose next, his voice smooth but rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we understand your emotions, but feelings are not facts. There is no footage showing my client harming his brother. What we have are suggestions, assumptions, and a grieving family looking for someone to blame." He gestured toward Tyler. "This is not a monster. This is a boy." Warner rose again, slow and deliberate. "We'll see what the jury thinks of that, after they hear his voice call a baby annoying. After they watch him lie. After they see what he deleted." The courtroom held its breath. They played the first clip again. The baby crying. Tyler's voice cutting through, "Why won't you shut up?" Then the loud thud. Some jurors flinched, as if they'd never heard it before. Warner paused the video and turned to the gallery. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is not a joke." Tyler laughed, audible, sharp, loud enough to turn every head in the room. Erin Jensen gasped. Rachel's fists clenched. Judge Haynes slammed his gavel. "Mr. Jensen, do that again and you'll be held in contempt." Tyler shrugged, grinning. "It's just ridiculous. You're all so dramatic." The gallery erupted in murmurs. One woman stood and shouted, "That's your baby brother, you sick freak." "Order!" the judge roared. This is not a circus. Sit down or you'll be removed, Rachel whispered. He's enjoying this. He likes the attention. Erin didn't respond. Her eyes were glued to Tyler, searching for something human and finding nothing. Warner took a breath. Let's continue. They brought in the forensic pathologist next. A composed woman in a navy blazer. She explained the bruising on Noah's chest and neck. The injuries are consistent with deliberate pressure applied by a hand. Not a fall. Not an accident, Hartley objected. Speculation. She wasn't there. Judge Haynes leaned forward. Overruled. She is speaking as an expert. Tyler rolled his eyes. Then came the twist. Warner played a second clip, less known, deeper in Tyler's deleted files. A selfie video just days before Noah's death. Tyler was in his room, filming himself complaining. They expect me to babysit that little demon every night. So I swear if he cries one more time, I'm gonna lose it. The jury collectively shifted. Hartley stood. That was a joke. Teenagers vent. That's not a confession. Warner turned, voice low and sharp. And if the joke ends with a dead baby, is it still just teenage sarcasm? Tyler chuckled under his breath again. The judge turned to him, his voice grave. Mr. Jensen, I am warning you. One more outburst, and you will be removed from your own trial. Rachel stood suddenly. Let him laugh. That's all he did the night Noah died. Gasps echoed. Erin reached up to pull her back down, tears streaking her face. The judge banged the gavel again. Order! Court officers surrounded Rachel. She shook her head, sat down, eyes on Tyler. He thinks this is a joke, she muttered. But he knows what he did. The room quieted. Everyone felt it now, the shift in tone. This wasn't just a trial anymore. This was a mirror showing the town its own horror. Even the jury looked shaken. Hartley sat down slowly, the color drained from his face. Tyler leaned over. Told you? I got this. But Hartley didn't answer, because something had changed. The cracks had started to show, and Tyler didn't even notice. As the courtroom emptied for recess, Warner turned to Reyes and said, You feel it? She nodded. We haven't even started yet. The morning sun bled through the courthouse blinds, staining the walls in pale gold. The second week of trial had begun, and the crowd outside had doubled. Everyone wanted to hear what came next. Whispers followed every new headline. The boy with no remorse. The smirking killer. Monster behind the crib. But inside, the air was colder. Everyone sensed that the mask was about to crack. D.A. Warner stood at the podium, voice low, calm, deliberate. Today, he began, we'll discuss the history that came before the tragedy. The moments that warned us who Tyler Jensen really was. Tyler sat still, jaw tight but eyes restless. His defense attorney shifted uneasily beside him. He knew what was coming. The first witness was an older woman with tired eyes and a slow gait, Tyler's middle school teacher. She placed her hand on the Bible, took the oath, and sat down. Warner approached gently. Mrs. Caldwell, do you remember the defendant? Her lips pressed together. Yes, I do. What kind of student was he? Smart, too smart, but there was something in him, something off. He once pushed another student so hard his nose broke. When I asked why, he said the boy was breathing too loud. The gallery murmured. Warner nodded, eyes flicking toward the jury. Did the school take disciplinary action? Yes, but his parents... She hesitated, glancing toward Erin. They fought to keep it quiet. Said it was just teenage anger. Erin dropped her gaze, shame burning her face. Warner's tone softened. Thank you, ma'am. When Mrs. Caldwell stepped down, a new witness entered. A neighbor, thin and pale, clutching a photo. She spoke into the microphone, her voice trembling. He was 12 when it happened. Our dog, Cooper. He got out of the yard. When we found him, he couldn't walk. The vet said someone kicked him hard. Hartley rose instantly. Objection. Irrelevant and unverified, Warner turned. Your Honor, this speaks directly to pattern of cruelty and escalation. Judge Haynes leaned back. Overruled. Proceed. The neighbor's eyes glistened. I didn't want to believe it, but Tyler used to stare through the fence and throw rocks. He laughed when the dog barked in pain. Gasps rippled across the gallery. Erin buried her face in her hands. Rachel wiped tears she didn't want anyone to see. Warner turned to the jury. This isn't about a single night. It's about a history, ignored, minimized, explained away until it grew into something fatal. Then he called the last witness of the day, a woman with a faint scar across her cheek. She was in her early 20s, wearing a nervous smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Please state your name," Warner said. "Leah Morton. And how do you know the defendant?" Leah glanced at Tyler. He didn't flinch. "We dated. For about 6 months." The courtroom tensed. Warner kept his tone neutral. "Did anything concerning happen during your relationship?" Leah hesitated. "At first, no. He was charming, quiet, but sometimes he'd get angry over nothing. If I didn't text back right away, he'd say I was ignoring him. Once, when I tried to leave a party early, he grabbed my wrist. Hard. Did he ever hurt you physically?" Leah swallowed. He once slammed his hand against the wall right next to my head. Said he wanted to see how much I'd flinch," Rachel gasped. Erin's tears turned to silent sobs. Warner spoke softly. "Did he ever show aggression toward children or animals?" Leah nodded. "He told me once that babies annoyed him, said they were like alarms you couldn't turn off." Tyler finally spoke, his voice dripping with mockery. "Oh, come on. You're making me sound crazy." Rachel turned toward her mother, voice breaking. "You knew?" Erin couldn't speak. She just nodded faintly, whispering, "I thought he'd changed." Warner looked back at the jury. "He didn't change. He evolved." The judge struck his gavel. "Court adjourned until tomorrow morning." Everyone rose. The crowd buzzed with shock as guards escorted Tyler away. He walked out with his head high, but the smirk was gone. His jaw was locked and his eyes burned, not with guilt, but rage. Behind him, the gallery whispered the words now echoing across every headline in Ashbrook: "This isn't his first time." In the hallway, Detective Reyes caught Warner's arm. "We just got a call," she said. "Someone else wants to testify. Says they knew Tyler before the family moved here." Warner frowned. "Another victim?" Reyes nodded. "Or maybe," she said quietly, "the one who got away." By the time Rachel entered the courtroom the next day, something had changed in her. She no longer sat beside her mother. She sat with the prosecution. Tyler Jensen noticed, of course. Her hands trembled, fingers digging into the folded tissue in her lap. But she said nothing. She hadn't slept. Couldn't. How do you rest when your family is being dissected in public, one scar at a time? Tyler entered in cuffs, the smirk back, but thinner now, twitchy. He glanced at his sister. She didn't look at him. Judge Haynes cleared his throat. "Let's proceed." D.A. Warner rose. "Your Honor, the next witness is Rachel Jensen." A collective inhale swept through the gallery. Rachel stepped onto the stand, back straight, chin lifted, but her eyes revealed the war behind them. She took the oath. "Sat down, Rachel." Warner began gently. "How would you describe your relationship with your brother?" She hesitated. "That used to be good. He was funny when he wanted to be, protective, but then he changed. Changed how? He got mean, short-tempered, cold, especially with Noah." Warner nodded, stepping slowly closer. "Can you tell the jury what you witnessed?" Rachel's hands tightened in her lap. "The first time, it was just a pinch. On Noah's leg," he cried. Tyler said it was nothing. That he was just teasing, but I saw his face. He was serious. A hush settled over the courtroom. Warner waited. "Another time," she continued, "I caught him holding a pillow over Noah's face. Not fully. Just hovering there. I screamed at him. He said I was overreacting." Erin gasped. Rachel looked straight at her mother. "You told me he was just tired. That he'd never actually hurt Noah." "I didn't know," Erin whispered. "I didn't know it was that bad." "You didn't want to know." Erin shook her head, tears falling. "He's my son, and Noah was your baby." Tyler leaned forward. "You liar," he hissed. "You hated me." Judge Haynes banged the gavel. "Mr. Jensen, sit down and stay silent." Warner let the silence linger. "Rachel," he said finally, "why didn't you come forward sooner?" Her voice cracked. "Because I thought it was my fault. That maybe I misunderstood, and because I was scared. Not of what he'd do to me, but of what it would do to you," she said, looking at her mother. "I thought if I stayed quiet we could pretend to be normal. And now I just want Noah to matter." Warner stepped back. No further questions. Rachel stepped down and walked straight to her seat beside Warner. The gallery stirred. Even the jurors shifted uncomfortably. The line had been drawn. Flood had broken. Hartley rose for cross-examination, but before he could speak, Tyler Jensen stood up. "Your Honor, may I?" May I speak? The room froze. Haynes looked at Warner, then back at Erin. Briefly. Erin walked to the center of the courtroom, her face a wreck of heartbreak. She turned to the jury. I still don't know how we got here. I love all my children. I loved Tyler, but I lost Noah, and now I've lost Tyler too. She looked at her son. You were supposed to protect him. Tyler didn't respond. I don't know what you are anymore, she whispered. Then she walked back to her seat, shoulders shaking. For a moment, there was no trial. Just a broken family in the middle of a courtroom too quiet to hold them. Should family protect crime or stand for justice? What would you do if it was your brother, your son, your blood, on the other side of the truth? Tell me below. As court adjourned for the day, Warner's assistant rushed to him with a file. Sir, she whispered, the new witness. He's agreed. He'll testify tomorrow. Warner opened the file. Inside was a name no one had expected. It wasn't just someone Tyler knew. It was someone he once called his best friend, and he had a story that could destroy everything. The courtroom was unusually still that morning. No whispers, no rustling papers. Just silence, like the air knew something heavy was coming. The spectators had returned, packed shoulder to shoulder, eyes forward. Everyone sensed it. Today the mask might fall for good. Tyler Jensen sat with his arms crossed, eyes locked on the witness door like a lion watching a cage open. Judge Haynes entered. The bailiff called the court to order. Then Warner stood. The prosecution calls Joshua Ellis. A ripple ran through the gallery. People leaned in. Tyler's smirk vanished. Josh entered slowly, wearing a hoodie too big for his frame, hands trembling slightly. He looked at Tyler just once, then sat down without greeting him. Warner approached gently. Josh, how long have you known the defendant? Josh swallowed hard. Since third grade. We were best friends. And were you close at the time of Noah Jensen's death? He nodded. Yes, we hung out almost every day. Josh, Warner said softly, can you tell the jury what Tyler told you the night Noah died? Josh looked down at his lap. He called me late. I was about to sleep. And what did he say? Another pause. Then he said, it's done. It's finally quiet in here. A gasp escaped from someone in the gallery. Warner gave Josh a moment, then asked, did you know what he meant? Not at first. But I asked if Noah was okay. He laughed. Said he won't be crying anymore. Hartley stood immediately. The objection, interpretation, speculation. Overruled, Judge Haynes said without hesitation. Let him speak. Josh's voice cracked. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe he was being sarcastic. He always joked like that. But then I saw the news the next morning. Warner nodded. Did Tyler ever make comments about Noah before that night? Josh stared ahead, face pale. Yeah, he once said babies are just noise machines with diapers. Another time he said, one day I'm gonna snap. You will see. And what did you do when he said that? I laughed. I thought he was venting. Warner's voice deepened. Did you ever see Tyler be physically aggressive toward anyone else? Josh hesitated. He once shoved a kid into a locker so hard he got a concussion. Said the kid bumped into him, but the kid never touched him. Warner looked at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just about actions. It's about patterns. It's about the slow boil of cruelty that everyone ignored, until it boiled over. Then he turned back to Josh. Final question. Did Tyler ever express regret about Noah? Josh shook his head. Never, he just said, they'll never prove it. Tyler slammed his palm on the table. Liar. He shouted, you're a snake. The gallery jumped. Judge Haynes stood. That's enough, Mr. Jensen. One more outburst and you will be removed. Tyler leaned back, eyes on fire. You were my best friend. Josh stared at him, his voice barely above a whisper. You were mine too, until I realized you never had a heart. Erin began to cry silently. Rachel sat still, lips pressed shut, eyes unblinking. Tyler didn't look at them. He stared only at Josh, a long, cold stare that said everything he couldn't shout. Hartley stood for cross-examination, but his tone lacked the strength it once had. Mr. Ellis, you waited almost 3 weeks to come forward. Why? Josh's voice didn't waver. Because I didn't want it to be true. But I couldn't keep pretending. Not after that video. Not after Rachel spoke up. I knew it was over. You're just trying to save yourself from guilt, Hartley said flatly. Josh nodded. Maybe, but that doesn't make him innocent. Hartley sat down without another word. When Josh stepped down, he didn't look back. He just walked past Tyler like they'd never shared a single secret. The prosecution rested for the day. As the crowd began filing out, one juror whispered to another, "That wasn't testimony. That was betrayal." And yet no one could deny it felt like justice finally had a voice. Just before the doors closed, Warner approached Judge Haynes with a file. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "with the court's permission, we'd like to introduce the recovered full video tomorrow." "The one with sound and footage?" The judge narrowed his eyes. "Will this settle the timeline?" Warner nodded. "It will do more than that, because the next piece of evidence wasn't just damning, it was undeniable. There was a different kind of electricity in the courtroom the next morning, not the usual buzz of reporters or the anxious whispers from the gallery. This was heavier, charged, like everyone knew something irreversible was about to happen, but no one could look away. The prosecution wheeled in a television, bigger than before, brighter, connected directly to the evidence room server. Judge Haynes entered, robe sweeping behind him, face unreadable. "Let's proceed," he said simply. Warner rose. "Your Honor, today the jury will view the unedited footage recovered from the defendant's deleted files. This video is approximately 4 minutes long. Audio and video are now fully synced. No cuts. No filters." Rachel gripped the edge of her seat. Erin braced herself. Tyler shifted, jaw tight. No smirk today. The lights dimmed. The footage began. The video opened with the baby monitor's lens tilted downward, pointed at Noah's crib. Noah was standing, clinging to the bars, crying softly. The room was dim but not dark. The bare night lamp cast shadows across the wall. Footsteps entered. Tyler's voice. "Shut up, shut up!" Noah cried louder. Tyler stood above the crib. His face was partially visible, jaw clenched, nostrils flaring. He leaned in. "You think this is cute? Keeping me up every night?" He reached down, grabbed the pacifier, jammed it into Noah's mouth. Noah whimpered, eyes wide. Tyler turned away. "You ruin everything." He paced the room, muttering. Then he turned back. "Guess what?" he whispered. "Tonight's the last time." He leaned over, blocked the lens, but the audio kept rolling. Muffled movement, a soft thump. Then nothing, no crying, no cooing, just silence. 30 seconds later, the sound of Tyler's footsteps, retreating. Then the bedroom door closing. The screen went black. The lights came back on, but no one moved, not even the judge, because that silence, the kind that follows a child's last breath, was louder than anything anyone could say. Erin dropped her head into her hands and sobbed. Rachel covered her mouth, shaking. In the jury box, one woman wiped tears. Another stared blankly at the wall, expression pale. Tyler leaned back, arms folded. He didn't flinch, but his foot bounced beneath the table, the only part of him that couldn't lie. Judge Haynes spoke at last. "Court will recess for 10 minutes, but 10 minutes wouldn't be enough." The gallery erupted. "No punishment is enough," someone shouted. Another voice. "That's a baby! That's a baby!" People stood, some yelling, others crying. The bailiff called for order, but it was chaos. Rachel stood. "I told you!" she screamed. "I told you he did this!" Hartley grabbed Tyler's arm, pulling him toward the back. "You said they couldn't prove it," Hartley hissed. Tyler didn't answer. He didn't look at anyone. He just stared at the blank screen where his secrets had finally spoken for themselves. 10 minutes turned into 30. When the court reconvened, the room was quieter but not calmer. The emotional aftermath lingered like smoke after a fire. Judge Haynes addressed the jury. "What you witnessed is difficult, but it is also evidence. You are to consider it without prejudice. That said," he paused, "this court recognizes the emotional weight of what was shown." Warner returned to the floor, voice low. "No further commentary is needed." The jury saw what we saw, heard what we heard. Then he looked directly at Tyler, and now so has the world. If you were in that jury, could you stay calm after seeing that video? Would you hold your silence? Or would your verdict already be sealed in your heart? As Warner gathered his files, Judge Haynes asked quietly, "Is there any more evidence pending?" Warner nodded. "Just one more. What is it?" the judge asked. Warner didn't smile. "It's the pacifier," he said. "We ran the DNA on it again." The judge raised an eyebrow. "And?" Warner looked up. "It has more than just Noah's DNA on it. because the object they'd all thought was symbolic grief was about to become the final nail in Tyler Jensen's coffin. The courtroom lights didn't dim this time. There was no need for dramatics. What came next didn't require a screen to disturb anyone. It just needed a single object. Small, blue, innocent. Warner walked to the center of the courtroom holding a sealed evidence bag. Inside it, the pacifier, he didn't lift it like a trophy. He didn't dramatize it. He simply held it in both hands and let the weight of it speak. This, he said softly, was recovered from the floor of the nursery beside Noah Jensen's body. He paused, his voice tightening slightly. It was found with a faint trace of dried saliva. Initially tested as belonging to Noah, that wasn't a surprise. He took a slow breath. But after the full footage was recovered, we ran the test again. This time we asked a new question. He turned toward the jury. What if the saliva wasn't from Noah's mouth, but from someone else's hand? A murmur rippled through the gallery. Judge Haynes leaned forward. Proceed. Warner handed a copy of the updated forensics report to the judge, then addressed the courtroom. The pacifier was tested using advanced touch DNA analysis. This time we didn't just look for Noah's genetic material. We tested for anything foreign. What we found was Tyler Jensen's DNA. Silence. Absolute piercing silence. Rachel let out a choked gasp. Erin clutched the side of the bench to keep from collapsing. Warner continued, his voice like a slow knife. The highest concentration wasn't on the handle. It wasn't where someone would pick it up to comfort a baby. He stepped closer to the jury. It was on the mouthpiece. Jurors froze. Warner nodded. That means someone was gripping it. Hard. Enough to leave skin cells. Enough to leave sweat. Enough to leave force. He raised the evidence bag for a moment, then set it down. This pacifier, he said, wasn't just dropped. It was used to silence him. Tyler's head jerked up. You're twisting it, he muttered. Warner turned. Then explain the pressure marks found around Noah's mouth. Explain the fact that your fingerprints were also found on the inside of the crib railing, pressed downward. Explain the muffled cries in the final audio. Go ahead, Tyler. Tell the court how a pacifier ended up covered in your DNA from the wrong end. Hartley stood. Objection. Argumentative. Overruled, Judge Haynes said quietly. He has the right to respond. But Tyler didn't. He said nothing. His jaw flexed. His fingers drummed the table like they were searching for control, but none came. Warner looked at the jury. This was not a moment of frustration. This was a method. This was intent. This was force. And this, he pointed to the pacifier, was murder. The jury stared at it like it was glowing. After court recessed, a medic was called for one juror who began shaking uncontrollably. The judge allowed an extended break. Even the most seasoned court reporters took off their headsets and wiped their eyes. Back in the gallery, Rachel sat beside Erin in silence. Not forgiveness, just shared ruin, Rachel whispered. I used to think that pacifier was the last piece of Noah we had. Erin stared straight ahead, voice hollow. Now it's the proof that he suffered. Rachel said nothing else. There was nothing else to say. When court resumed, Warner stood again. There are no more surprises, he said. No more theories. Only truth. He walked past Tyler's table. Didn't even look at him. We saw the tape. We heard the cries. We know the pattern. And now we have the object that ties it all together. He pointed to the bag again. The pacifier inside looked almost too small to matter, but it mattered more than anything. It was the last thing Noah touched, and now it would help finish what he couldn't say himself. As the jury was dismissed for the day, Judge Haynes called both legal teams to the bench. I've reviewed the new evidence. It's admissible. He looked at Warner. And you said there was one last witness still willing to speak. Warner nodded. Bring them tomorrow. Judge Haynes closed the file. Let the court hear from the one person who lived because someone had seen the signs, someone who had survived the same monster, and they were finally ready to speak. The next morning, the courtroom felt different. The air was heavy, yes, but quieter, like everyone had agreed to hold their breath at the same time. No cameras flashed. No one dared whisper. Because today the only voice that mattered was Rachel Jensen's. When the bailiff called her name, she didn't hesitate. She stood tall, walked to the witness stand, and took the oath with a hand that didn't tremble. Her mother sat in the front row, clutching a rosary, her lips moving in silent prayer. Tyler sat motionless, jaw tight, eyes fixed on his sister. He looked more like a shadow than a person. Warner's tone was gentler than it had been with anyone else. "Rachel," he began, "we know this isn't easy, but can you tell the court what you saw that night?" Rachel took a breath. It was late. Around 11. I was finishing homework. I heard Noah crying through the wall, and then I heard footsteps. Tyler's footsteps, heavy, fast. I figured he was going to calm him down. She looked down, voice tightening. But the crying didn't stop. What happened next? Warner asked quietly. I went to check. Her throat caught for a second. The door was cracked open. I peeked inside. Tyler was standing over the crib, holding the pacifier. He said, "You're not crying now, are you?" Erin let out a soft moan. Rachel's voice cracked, but she continued. Noah wasn't moving. His face was red. And Tyler? He just stood there, like he was waiting for something. The courtroom was frozen. Even the sound of scribbling from the court reporter stopped. "What did you do?" Warner asked. I screamed his name. He turned and looked at me. Her eyes flicked toward her brother. He didn't look scared. He looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted him. She swallowed hard. I ran downstairs. I called my mom. But by the time she got there, it was too late. Warner nodded slowly. "Rachel, why didn't you tell us this sooner?" Rachel wiped a tear with the back of her hand. "Because he told me not to. That nobody would believe me. That if I said anything, I'd ruin what was left of our family." Her voice shook now, a tremor of rage beneath the grief. And I believed him. I believed a monster. The words hit like thunder. A quiet gasp rippled through the room. Tyler's voice broke the silence. "You think you're perfect?" he spat. "You act like you never lost your temper. You think crying on that stand makes you better than me?" Rachel looked at him steady. "No," she said softly. "It just makes me human." Judge Haynes slammed his gavel. "Mr. Jensen, one more outburst and you'll be removed." Tyler's eyes darted to the jurors. "They already made up their minds," he muttered. "They don't care what I say." No one responded. Because deep down, everyone knew he was right. No one cared anymore, not after what they'd seen. Rachel continued, her voice quieter now. "For weeks after Noah died, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing there holding that pacifier. It wasn't grief that haunted me. It was the silence. The way he looked at me like daring me to tell." Her eyes glistened. "I should have spoken sooner. Maybe if I had, Mom wouldn't have spent nights blaming herself. Maybe Dad wouldn't have stopped coming home. Maybe Noah would be alive." Warner nodded solemnly. "Thank you, Rachel, for your courage." As she stepped down from the stand, the room didn't clap, didn't move. But every juror's eyes followed her, like they were watching someone crawl out of a grave she'd lived in for months. Rachel walked past Tyler, close enough to feel his breath. He whispered, "You ruined everything." She stopped, turned her head slightly and said, "No, you did." Then she kept walking. When court recessed for the day, Erin Jensen approached her daughter in the hallway. Her voice was barely audible. "I didn't protect you. Either of you." Rachel took her mother's hand. "Then protect the truth now," she said. "Don't back down again." Erin nodded, eyes wet. "I won't." Back in the courtroom, Warner gathered his files for the next day. Detective Reyes leaned over. "You ready for tomorrow?" she asked. He nodded. "Tomorrow the defense gets their turn." Reyes frowned. "You think they'll even try?" Warner looked toward the empty defendant's chair. "They'll try," he said, "but it won't matter, because tomorrow arrogance would meet its own collapse. And for the first time, Tyler Jensen would realize he couldn't outtalk the truth anymore." Tyler Jensen entered the courtroom that morning, wearing a pressed shirt and a dead stare. His smirk was gone. So was the foot-tapping, the lazy posture, the mocking glances toward the jury. Today even he understood this was the final stretch. The part where his words would either save him or sink him forever. His lawyer, Daniel Hartley, looked 10 years older than when the trial started. Deep lines etched into his forehead, sleeplessness dark under his eyes. He'd defended gang leaders, child abusers, liars, but never someone like Tyler, and never with this much evidence against him. Judge Haynes gave a nod. "Defense may proceed." Hartley stood, shoulders squared, tone rehearsed but hollow. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I ask you to remember what this country stands on. Reasonable doubt. He stepped closer. Yes, my client made mistakes. Yes, he was angry. Yes, he said things a 17-year-old never should. But words are not murder. Sarcasm is not intent. Teen frustration is not a death sentence. He turned toward the jurors. Ask yourselves, is it possible even remotely that Noah's death was an accident? That he fell? That Tyler panicked and lied to cover it up? If that possibility exists, no matter how small, you must find him not guilty of murder. Warner didn't even blink. He knew what was coming. He'd seen it in dozens of trials. The desperate spin. But what came next surprised even him. Hartley turned to the judge. Your Honor, the defense calls Tyler Jensen to the stand. The room gasped. Rachel's jaw dropped. Erin closed her eyes. Even Judge Haynes raised an eyebrow. Is that your final decision, Mr. Hartley? Hartley nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Tyler stood slowly and walked to the witness box, cuffs clinking. He raised his hand, swore to tell the truth, then sat. Hartley approached carefully. Tyler, did you kill your brother? No, he said softly. Did you harm him intentionally in any way? No, I didn't mean for anything to happen. That one word, mean, hung in the air like a rot. Why did you say the things you said in the video? I was tired, Tyler said. I was frustrated. He cried all the time. I just wanted him to stop, but I never wanted him dead. Then how did he die, Tyler? His voice dropped. I gave him the pacifier. He was screaming. I pushed it into his mouth and held it there. I thought it would help him calm down, he paused. I didn't know it would make him stop breathing. Gasps echoed from the gallery. Rachel whispered, He just admitted it. Judge Haynes pounded the gavel. Silence in the court. Hartley stepped back. You see, it was a tragic mistake. A teenager's panic. Not premeditated. Not cruel. Just a boy overwhelmed. He turned to the jury. Don't confuse cruelty with catastrophe. Then he sat down. The courtroom was silent for about 3 seconds. Then Warner stood, walked slowly toward the stand, and locked eyes with Tyler. You said you held the pacifier in his mouth until he stopped crying. Yes? Was he crying when you started? Yes. And did he stop? Yes. Why didn't you pull it away then? Tyler shifted. I didn't know he was in danger. Didn't know. Warner repeated. Even after he went limp? Even after his body slumped? Even after he made no sound at all? I panicked, Tyler said, voice rising. It happened fast. Warner stepped closer, and then you deleted the video. I didn't want anyone to think. You knew what it looked like, Warner shouted. Because it was what it looked like. He turned to the jury. You heard it. You saw it. You just heard him say it. He held it there. He made him stop crying. He didn't stop. Not until Noah couldn't breathe. He pointed toward Tyler. That's not an accident. That's not a mistake. That's the sound of control, of dominance, of a predator who finally snapped. Tyler's face twisted. He wouldn't shut up. Warner didn't stop. He was a baby. I didn't mean to. You didn't care. That's the difference. Judge Haynes slammed the gavel. That's enough. Warner stepped back, chest heaving slightly. But the damage was done because the jury didn't just see Tyler. They heard him, they believed him, and they knew exactly who he was now. As court adjourned for the final time before deliberation, Judge Haynes gave the jury their instructions. Go now, he said, and weigh every piece of truth. Rachel stood beside her mother. Erin whispered, Do you think they'll convict him? Rachel didn't hesitate. They already did, she said. Now they just have to say it out loud. The jury took exactly 9 hours. 9 long silent hours where the courtroom stayed half full, as if everyone feared leaving before the moment history was made. Some stayed out of curiosity, some out of grief, and a few, like Rachel, stayed because they needed to see it through to the very last breath of justice. Inside the deliberation room, the 12 jurors had barely spoken for the first 30 minutes. No one wanted to be the first to say it, but eventually one woman whispered it into the silence like a confession. I think he meant it, and the rest nodded, slowly, heavily. Because they all had seen the same things. Tyler's face, the pacifier, the video, the testimony, and they all knew what came next. That evening, just before dusk, the bailiff re-entered the courtroom and approached Judge Haynes with a single slip of paper. They've reached a verdict. The words spread like wildfire. Within 15 minutes, The gallery filled. Reporters took their seats. Cameras clicked into standby mode. The Jensen family was ushered in through the side. Erin walked with a hand pressed to her chest, as if trying to keep her heart from falling out. Rachel walked beside her, no longer needing to speak. Their grief had already spoken louder than any closing argument. Tyler entered last, still cuffed, still silent, but his smirk was gone. For the first time he looked around the courtroom and saw not people but mirrors. Every face that had once known him now reflected back only the monster he'd become. "Will the defendant please rise?" Judge Haynes said, voice steady, solemn. Tyler stood slowly. The jury filed in, 12 faces. No smiles, no tears, just the weight of a verdict they could never unhear, unsee, or uncarry. The forewoman, a woman in her 60s with deep lines around her mouth, cleared her throat. "In the matter of the state versus Tyler Jensen, we, the jury, find the defendant." Every eye locked on her lips. Guilty. The word echoed like thunder. Erin gasped, one hand flying to her mouth. Rachel closed her eyes. Tyler didn't move, no outrage, no breakdown, just the faintest flicker in his eyes. For the first time it wasn't defiance, it was fear. Judge Haynes nodded once. "The jury has spoken. Sentencing will be held tomorrow morning." Hartley leaned toward Tyler, whispered something. Tyler didn't respond. His shoulders had slumped just slightly, because everything was different now. He wasn't fighting anymore. He was waiting. As the courtroom emptied, the gallery buzzed with quiet reactions. Some clapped, quickly silenced. Some hugged. Others walked out in stunned silence. Warner sat at his table, closing the file gently. He didn't celebrate. He never did. For prosecutors like him, victory always tasted like ashes. Detective Reyes walked over, voice low. "Are you okay?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, just, it never feels as good as you think it will." "No," she said, "but it feels right." Across the aisle, Rachel helped her mother to her feet. Erin's hands were shaking. Her mascara had run, but she stood on her own. "Is it really over?" she whispered. Rachel looked toward the empty jury box. "No," she said softly. "Not until the sentence." Outside, a storm was gathering. The wind picked up. Leaves scattered across the courthouse steps. Inside, the only thing left to do was pass judgment. But for the Jensen family, judgment had already begun long ago. It began the moment they saw Noah's crib empty. It began the moment Tyler smiled in court. And now, it was almost finished. That night, alone in her bedroom, Rachel opened Noah's baby album for the first time since the funeral. She traced her fingers over the photo of him, holding the blue pacifier, the same one that had sealed Tyler's fate. She whispered, "They finally believed you." A tear slipped down her cheek. Tomorrow, Tyler Jensen would learn what justice really felt like, not from a jury, but from a judge who had nothing left to protect. The sky outside the courthouse was gray that morning. Not stormy, not calm, just waiting. Inside, the courtroom filled quickly. Not with cameras or news crews. They weren't allowed for this part. This was private, final, personal. The sentencing hearing wasn't about headlines. It was about reckoning. Tyler Jensen entered in shackles, his hands cuffed to his waist, his ankles bound, 2 officers on either side. He no longer looked like a teenage boy. He looked like someone emptied out, hollowed, skin pale, eyes sunken. No one waved to him. No one cried for him. Erin sat quietly in the front row, rosary clutched between white knuckles. Beside her, Rachel wore all black. She hadn't said a word all morning. Didn't need to. Her presence was louder than any outburst could be. Judge Haynes took his seat, his gavel still for once. His voice was low, not angry, but heavy. "Today we pass sentence on Tyler Jensen, found guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Noah Jensen, aged 14 months. He looked directly at the defendant. "Mr. Jensen, you were given a gift that many are not, a family who trusted you, a home, a baby brother who looked at you like a protector." The judge's tone darkened. "And you betrayed all of it." He paused. The room was so still one could hear the soft ticking of a wall clock. "This court has watched your smirks, your mockery, your cruelty. But yesterday we saw something else. A moment of silence after your verdict. A moment where, for the first time, you didn't try to spin the truth. Maybe because it was no longer possible. Or maybe finally you saw yourself as we all do." Tyler didn't move. He stared ahead, eyes blank. Judge Haynes continued. This sentence is not given lightly. You are 17 years old, but your age does not absolve you. Because your actions were not a child's mistake. They were deliberate, repeated, and final. He leaned slightly forward. The state of insert state permits capital sentencing for minors convicted of premeditated murder when tried as adults under aggravating circumstances, including the victim being a child. A gasp slipped from someone in the gallery. Rachel stared straight. Ahead, Erin closed her eyes. Tyler Jensen, the judge said, voice now echoing, you are hereby sentenced to death. There it was, the final word, the word no one wanted to hear, but everyone knew was coming. Execution will not occur before the defendant reaches the legal age of majority, pending automatic appeal, Judge Haynes added. But this court finds no grounds for leniency. Tyler blinked just once. His lips parted slightly. No words came out. The room remained frozen. Then Judge Haynes asked, does the family wish to make a statement before we close? Rachel stood, slowly walked to the front. She faced her brother, no fear, no hesitation. Just heartbreak hardened into steel. You took Noah from us, she said. And you didn't just take his life. You took our laughter, our peace, our faith. She pointed to the gallery. Mom doesn't sleep. Dad moved out. I can't look at pictures without hearing your voice. Her voice cracked. But today, it ends. She stepped closer. You don't get to haunt us anymore. Then she turned to the judge. Thank you. She returned to her seat. Erin reached for her hand, and this time Rachel didn't pull away. The judge banged the gavel. Court is adjourned. As Tyler was led out in chains, he turned once, just for a second, and looked at the family he'd destroyed. No apology, just emptiness, because he had nothing left to say. Outside, as rain began to fall, Rachel walked alone to the memorial bench by the courthouse garden. A small plaque read, "In memory of Noah Jensen, loved missed heard." She sat down, opened her palm and placed something on the bench, the blue pacifier. Then she stood and walked away, never once looking back, because next came the final chapter. Not in court, but in healing. The trial was over, but the silence afterward was louder than the verdict. There were no more news crews outside the Jensen house. No more neighbors whispering over fences. No more reporters stationed across the street, hoping for a headline. The world moved on. But inside that home, time hadn't resumed, because you don't restart after something like that. You rebuild slowly, quietly, sometimes not at all. Rachel Jensen started with the nursery. She didn't tell her mother. Just unlocked the door one morning and stepped inside. The air was stale. Dust lined the edges of Noah's crib. His blanket still folded at the corner. A stuffed bear slouched in the corner chair. For a moment she just stood there, not crying, just breathing it in, remembering what it felt like before the world cracked open. She pulled out boxes, photos, tiny socks. The rattle he used to throw every time he laughed. But she kept one thing, the pacifier. Not the one from the evidence bag. The court had sealed that. This was the spare, the one Noah always tossed aside in favor of his favorite. She placed it on his shelf. Not to forget, but to honor. Downstairs, Erin was making breakfast. It was the first time in weeks the smell of eggs filled the kitchen again. She didn't speak much, but she smiled when Rachel came down. A small, tired smile, the kind you give when your soul is learning how to breathe again. I was thinking, Erin said, cracking an egg, we could donate some of Noah's clothes. Maybe to the shelter. Rachel nodded. Oh yeah, I'd like that. They didn't talk about Tyler, not out of avoidance, but because there was nothing left to say. He was gone. He'd been transferred to a maximum security juvenile facility until he turned 18. After that, a death row cell would wait. A sentence handed down not just by a judge, but by fate. And Tyler would live every day with the sound of silence he once created. Across town, Prosecutor Warner filed the last of the paperwork. He declined every interview. He didn't want his face in the headlines. Justice to him didn't need applause. It needed peace. Detective Reyes dropped by his office with coffee. You think he'll appeal? He will, Warner said. They always do. You think it'll stick? He nodded. The truth always does. They clinked coffee cups in quiet acknowledgement. Then moved on to the next case, because the system didn't stop, not even for broken hearts. That weekend, Rachel visited the cemetery alone. No cameras, no speeches. Just her and Noah. She sat by his grave, knees tucked up, sweater pulled tight. The tombstone was small, grey, and simple. Noah Elias Jensen, January 3rd, 2023, May 5th, 2024. Forever our giggle in the silence. She placed a single white flower beneath his name, then pulled something from her pocket, a letter. She unfolded it and began to read aloud, voice trembling but steady. "Hey, buddy, it's me, your big sister. I don't know if you can hear me, but I hope you can. I miss your laugh. I miss your eyes. I miss the way your whole body bounced when you were happy." She paused, wiping her nose. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I should have yelled louder, should have fought harder. But I promise, I never stopped loving you. Not for a second." She set the letter beside the flower, weighed down by a small stone, then stood. "I hope you're somewhere soft now, somewhere safe." A breeze picked up, brushing her hair across her face. She smiled faintly, almost as if he had responded. And maybe, in some way, he had. Back home, Erin hung a new frame in the hallway, a photo of all 3 kids. From before, when things still made sense. She didn't do it to forget what happened. She did it so no one would forget who they were, a family, once. The court didn't bring Noah back, but it made the world say his name, it made the silence speak, and in that silence, justice finally answered, not with rage but with truth, and that was enough.